Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time once again for another episode of The Hangover. Hey, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis. Shannon White, the pride of West Virginia. Tony Defeo, the pride of the world, are both here with me. And my name is Bryan Anthony Davis, the pride of nothing. But I am glad to be here along with you. Happy Monday, my friends. It's a Monday in June. Not much is going on in Steeler Nation, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Shannon, how are you?
I'm great. I know what the topic is tonight, and I'm excited to talk about some defensive blue-collar guys.
I love it. Tony, what's up with you, my friend?
I am doing great. Had a great weekend. Went to an awesome wedding. Saw a couple of friends tied a knot. It was a fantastic weekend. How about you?
Well, what I did was I went to see Top Gun Maverick. Have you seen it, Shannon?
Great movie.
I know Dave Schofield said to me, he said, man, if somebody drops out of the tickets you bought, I'll go back tomorrow. I'll go back again. Tony, did you see the movie?
No, but everybody's talking about it so much. I have to see it. I have to.
They did it right. I will just tell you, they did
Tom
the whole
Cruise,
thing right.
He's a perfectionist.
The movie was, I thought it was fantastic, and I didn't have that much of expectations going into the whole thing, so I loved it. I did a whole bunch of stuff over the weekend. I'm tired and I feel wiped out, and it's Monday and it's the start of everything. So a pretty quiet weekend with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but as we always do, we go ahead and do the news of the day, and the news of the day today is pretty much there's a birthday.
Woo!
Happy birthday today. Let's say it. Happy birthday to Kenny Pickett. He's 24 years old. And what do you get the quarterback that's the 24-year-old that seemingly has everything?
Well, they already got him, Pickens and CA3, so and they signed CA3 today. So
that's what they got him. I guess they didn't get him the offensive line that he wanted, but they I shouldn't say that. I think the offensive line is going to be slightly better. But they got him CA3. That's the other news of the day. Calvin Austin III is signed, sealed, and delivered. Remember, Austin 319 said, "I just ran past your bleep." So with that being said, NFL news today, gentlemen, this is Pittsburgh oriented. And for those of you that were hoping that the Steelers were going to end up getting Aaron Donald to replace Stephon Tuitt, it's not going to happen, as Aaron Donald restructured his contract. Boys, this is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. He gets $65 million guaranteed over the next 2 seasons, and he is now the highest non-paid quarterback in the league. And that might be history too, in history.
Woo.
Wow. I'm glad that happened this year and not last year.
Oh,
right when TJ Watt was getting ready to sign. But now you hope TJ's like saying, "Hey, hold my beer. Let's see what I can do." So, gentlemen, are you bummed that Aaron Donald is now not coming to Pittsburgh ever?
Well, maybe not right now, but 5 or 6 years, he'll probably be one of those guys that the fans want to see them pick up to go all in at the deadline.
Yeah, that's not happening either. But with that being said, he is one of the greats on defense. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have had a great history of greats on defense, on that defensive side of the ball. Last week, we talked about how the blue-collar town of Pittsburgh, the Steel City, had a lot of blue-collar guys on this team through the years, and they still do. And we talked about the fact that the Steelers on offense had some great blue-collar guys, and we went position by position. We are going to do the same thing this week on the defensive side of the ball, and I have a feeling we are going to find more historic and more current lunch pail guys, those guys wearing the hard hats here in the Steel City. So with that being said, To quote my friend Tone Loke, which I'm not friends with, but I'd love to party with Tone Loke. To quote Tone Loke, who I've never hung out with, let's do it. All right, Shannon, we're going to start with you. We're going to go on that defensive line. So in the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's been a lot of lunch pail guys on that defensive line. Now, we're going to try to stay away from number one picks like we did last week, which that would exclude a guy like Joe Green, which would be very easy to put a guy like Joe Green on that list. But we don't want to really do that because a high pick like that, we're talking about the guys that scratched and clawed and did the dirty work to make themselves famous. So, Shannon, who's your first defensive lineman you can think of?
Well, I've been thinking about it. And, of course, I have to mention Green, just from the aspect of later in his career when he was playing with 1.5 arms. He was the guy that drove that defense. He was the key, and he knew that. So he played through pain. He played through weakness, and he set a great example. But like you said, we're wanting to look for the guys who were overachievers. And Chris Hoke immediately comes to mind.
Whoa.
I mean, he backed up Casey Hampton, who was arguably the best pure nose tackle in modern NFL history, him or Vince Wilfork. And when Chris Hoke come in the game, you felt comfortable. There wasn't a huge drop off.
Yeah. And
he did it with just technique and intensity and hustle. And, he's one of the most underrated players off that great defense they had during those years. So, yeah, Chris Hoke would be my choice.
I bet you we could stick on this defensive line for a long time. And we're just going to stick just on the entire defensive line. We're not going to break it into defensive tackle, nose tackle. We're just going to throw up some guys that we think. Tony, I have a feeling that you could come up with a few from the same era that Shannon did and earlier. Go ahead, Tone.
Oh, I have a few, but my favorite from the 80s, Keith Willis. 1982 undrafted free agent. He made the team. The next year, he had 14 sacks. He finished his career with 59 sacks, all for the Steelers. I mean, here's a guy who came along, right after that Super Bowl era ended, a few years after it, and he became one of the anchors of those 80s defenses. And to quote him, as far as some people were concerned within the NFL, he was always going to be an undrafted free agent. That's how they always saw him. So he always had to work. He always had to bust his tail. And there's a lot of guys that make the NFL as undrafted free agents, and they have okay careers. They stick around for 4 or 5 years. But it's so rare for somebody to come along as an undrafted free agent and have a lengthy and productive career. And that was Keith Willis. And I'll always admire the career that he had here. And the adversity that you have to overcome, the doubt that you have to overcome to be to make it as an undrafted free agent. So he's number one in my book.
We are going to go around the horn again after I go because there's so many on the defensive line and we have the time to do so. And there's a lot coming in. And I tell you what we'll do. If I'm seeing a good one on the live chat, I'll bring it up. And so I'll go with another one. Keith Willis was my guy. I agree with you. You and I, we come from the same time. We've always agreed on guys like this. So let's go ahead and take a look at Tim Tyne said Aaron Smith, 3rd rounder, but yeah, definitely. And he hasn't shown up yet, but the Diesel, 7th round pick, Brett Kiesel is going to be on that list. Myrna, Jane, and Bert, I love this one. Kimo von Oelhoffen.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a definite good one. So Reginald Rivers says L.C. Greenwood, and that's a guy you think of. I mean, man, that guy, he's number one when you talk about Steelers, not in the Hall of Fame and really should be. Rob Titoff just came in with Kevin Henry and Nolan Harrison. And notice I pronounced Kevin right because I remember when he was around. And, we're WWE guys, so the cousin of Mark Henry, the world's strongest man. And Nolan Harrison, he came in from the Raiders for a couple years in the late 90s. Was really tough for this team. But I want to talk about guys that played with L.C. Greenwood. And I'm going to go ahead and right away say one of my lunch pail guys. He loses 18 pounds right before the Super Bowl because he has the flu. Comes in, gets the first points. Dwight Mad Dog White. Man, that guy was a grinder. He was he was everything that a lunch pail guy is supposed to be. So I love it. So I'm going to say Mad Dog White. Tim Tynes just threw in Ernie Holmes. I'm going to go ahead with my second guy from the 70s who came in later in the 70s. And I'm going to say John Banaszak. Was that yours, Tony?
Oh, I knew you were going to say it. I mean, he's a great example.
So, you know what? I wore number 68 and number 76 when I played football for the American Outfitter Eagles, and I was either Banaszak or I was LC. So there you go. Shannon, we'll go back to you. Anybody else on the defensive line?
You said a lot of the guys that I was thinking as well. You have guys like Gary Dunn, who,
yes, number 67.
He was just such a valuable contributor. Never got the fanfare, but he was a blue collar guy, just a hard worker. So yeah, when I was thinking, I thought of Hoke first, and then I thought of Kiesel, and then I thought of Gary Dunn because I figured nobody would say Gary.
Gary Dunn was on my list, but I went with I wanted to go Banaszak first. Banaszak was a guy that his dad was like, in his family, like, we're Cleveland Browns fans. How could you? but they were there. They were there all the time.
I love it.
I've told my nephew that, well, I'd never play for the Ravens. I'm like, one, if you were drafted by the Ravens, you're playing for the Ravens.
Right.
And two, I'll be wearing black and purple if you're playing for the Ravens, and that's no problem because family comes first. I won't love it, but I would. There'd still be some Steelers on my body, though. You don't go. I mean, it would be only. I would still have a hard time, but I don't know if my nephew's going to get drafted. But anyways, he's 14. But I just tell him if you're ever playing, it doesn't matter who you get drafted by, you take it and you run.
That's right.
Tony, do you have any others?
Well, obviously Brett Kiesel. He's a fine example of somebody who he was a lower round pick, and it's hard to think of him as a blue collar guy because he was such a great athlete. I mean, he started out it's like a gunner or something on the kick, or not gunner, but running down the field on kickoffs, but he was such a great athlete, and he had that rock star personality, with the beard and everything. So it's hard to think of him as a blue collar guy, but I mean, when you're a lower round pick and you find a way to become a starter or a major contributor on one of the greatest defenses that the league has ever seen. I mean, that says something.
I like that. I mean, I knew Kiesel was coming up. In fact, I'm surprised he didn't come up first. Tim Tynes once again said Ernie Holmes. Rob Titoff said Joel Steed. Joel Steed, a third round pick. Definitely. Javier says Merrill Hodge. Speaking facts, and I don't know whether he's talking about him as a blue collar guy. We had him last week, or if he's talking about our linebacker Devin Bush. And George Teston is saying Steve Furness, which I was definitely thinking of Steve Furness. I'm thinking of some guys. I'm just not going to go through because we're going to go to another position. But let's just go ahead and mention Gerald Williams, number 98. He was a really good one. Edmund Nelson's another guy you think of as blue collar and tough. Donald Evans from the 90s.
Yeah.
He came in as a free agent. And the ultimate, I think this guy's an ultimate blue collar because he didn't go to college. And it's one Ray Seals.
Yeah.
So Ray Seals played semi-pro in Syracuse and ended up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And next thing you know, he's in Pittsburgh for 3 years and very good player. So that pretty much covers the defensive line. If we didn't miss anybody, I do apologize. Reggie Rivers says Orpheus Roy. Javier saying John Banaszak, which was one of my top picks. So
Buckner.
Brenson Buckner. I have trouble with that one with him being a number 2 pick. But yeah, he he did clean up a lot of messes up in the middle, and it's a shame he was only here for 3 years. That's a guy I would have loved to have kept around.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and throw out one name each. I'm not going to throw one out. Maybe defensive line, and I know you're going to say Cam, and Shannon. I know Shannon's going to say, I know he's the number 1 pick, but I'm going Cam. So I'm saying no to Cam. Cam is definitely a blue collar guy, even though he's a number 1 pick, because we know he's obvious. But if you were to take one of those other guys that you just think is just an ultimate blue collar guy on that defensive line currently for the Steelers, Shannon and Tony, who would it be? Shannon?
Currently. That's a tougher one. I guess, like I said, I like Wormley as far as he's always ready. I've actually got an article coming out, what actually come out today, talking about Wormley being like a true professional. He's always ready when called upon, whether he's a starter or where he's in the rotation. So he kind of got exposed because of his run defense, and he's better as a rotational player. But he definitely brings that mentality and the professionalism. So I'd have to go Wormley.
I like that. I definitely do. Tony, do you have a guy?
Well, Wormley would have been my pick too, because he, like Shannon said, he's a consummate professional, and he's never going to be a superstar in this league, but he's going to be called upon to play several roles. But I guess another one would be just based on last year and the fan hype about him. He's kind of like a Isaac Redmond kind of guy. That would be Henry. Was it Henry Mondo? Is that his name?
Henry Mondo, number 99.
Yeah, that's like your typical underdog Steeler fan favorite. So if he can stick around, he could be perhaps somebody who could play a role and be one of those grinded out lunch pail kind of guys.
All right, when we get to the 90s, when we get to the 80s, things changed in 1982. The Steelers went from a 4-3 to a 3-4. So this is going to confuse a couple things with the linebackers. So I'm going to ask you guys to come up with 2 each outside linebackers and 2 each, either an inside or a middle linebacker. It could be either or. So I am going to go ahead and start with Tony this time. And let's go ahead start on the outside.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously Brian Hinkle, that's somebody that, late round pick, with 1981. He was a long-time starter here. He was a contributor, major contributor, great athlete, better athlete than people gave him credit for. He was pretty decent in coverage. So that's one. And another one that people might think might have forgotten about already would be Clark Higgins. Here's a guy who had to start opposite Joey Porter all those years. Joey was the face of the defense, basically, until Troy came along. So, and he was such a dynamic, such a dynamic personality. And Clark Higgins was that quiet guy on the other side. He was productive, not a Pro Bowler, but pretty darn good. Didn't get a whole lot of fame. So those are my 2 on the outside. Now you want me to go on the inside?
No, I'll let Shannon go next.
Okay.
I will say this about Higgins. Higgins was not quite in the locker room, though. He was probably one of the most boastful guys. Loved to go with his shirt off, showing off his abs. He was famous for being that guy. I absolutely love that pick of Higgins. I did not have it. So, and that's perfect. So thanks for bringing that one up. Mr. White, take it away.
Well, everybody knows he's one of my all-time favorites. And considering his draft position and where he came from, Fort Valley State, it's got to be Greg Lloyd. The dude was so intense, he would do anything on the football field and be successful. And successful, the final score that he did about anything else. And so to me, he's the ultimate blue-collar guy. And the guy I thought about was Higgins as well, because, trying to think of a guy who was maybe overlooked because of who they played with. Because a lot of times the Steelers have the tandems, the bookend guys at outside linebacker. So, I thought of Lloyd first, and then I thought of Hagan. So, you could even put a guy out there, like a current guy is Alex Highsmith, from being a walk-on to becoming a really established, solid starter. And I think he has potential to continue to improve. So, but that would be my two picks.
Tony, will you agree with Highsmith, as we're going to go ahead and we'll just hit that now?
Oh, for outside? Oh, yeah, because here's a guy walk on at Charlotte. He was a walk on at Charlotte, and then he turned himself into a third-round pick. And, he's already made some strides from his first season to a second season. So absolutely.
Let me give you a guy from the 1970s that played 10 years on this team. 10 years. And he's a guy that, if I ask you to name 40 Steelers from the 1970s, you're not going to come up with them. But it's a linebacker. And if I'm not mistaken, he was from Cal. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? I'll give you his number.
Lauren Taves?
Lauren Taves.
Yeah. I say his last name wrong.
I believe it's Taves, Toews, and that's a lot like the woman from the Love Boat that played Julie. Was she Lauren Taves also? She was something Taves. That's something that we're going to have to look up and find out. But I absolutely loved Lauren Taves. I just thought he was a guy that. He's the guy, the football card you get. You'd be like, damn it, I got Lauren Taves.
he's making an appearance at Giant Eagle. Yippee.
But then you realized that guy, every time you look at highlights from 78 or 79, that guy was killing it.
Yeah.
Because Jack Ham was getting hurt. Guys were getting hurt, and he just came in and he got it done. So now, here's the thing, spelled completely different. Julie from the Love Boat is Lauren Taves, Laurentews. And this is Lauren Taves, Lorentoews. So I tell you what, I think I've got something special for the more you know coming up this week, because that's something we just stumbled upon.
Mm-hmm.
They were both big in the late 70s.
Yeah.
There you go. Wow. Check out BTSC on Sunday. See if I remember this when it's all coming down to it. Javier just came out with Mike Merriweather, which I'm a big fan of Mike Merriweather. And I met Mike Merriweather, and he was like, I should have never left. He said that was one of the biggest mistakes of my life, but I was young. What do I know? Chad Brown, Myrna, Jane, and Bert saying you could even actually put him on the inside if you want. But yeah, he was great. Second round pick. Mm-hmm. Andy Russell, George Teston saying, yeah, you can't sleep on Andy Russell. Pedro is saying Hardy Nickerson. Javier is also saying Robin Cole, the Cheesecake King. Have you ever had his cheesecake?
No.
It's damn good. I got one of Giant Eagle about 10 years ago. So, but as far as everybody else goes, I think that's a pretty good pick. Art Gordon, I'm going to go ahead and save that one for inside, I think. Let's bring him up now. Jerry O. Is he an outside linebacker or inside linebacker?
Oh, he's inside.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That was one of my guys.
You can expand upon it.
Okay, well, we'll put up here. I'll put up the Men in Black thing. Everybody will be. Everybody will lose that, and then we can go ahead and do that again.
Race.
Yeah. George Teston says, I think he went to the Vikings. I think he's talking about Merriweather. Yeah. So he held out the entire 1988 season, and in 1989 on draft day, went for a number one pick. The only time the Steelers had two number one picks. and they ended up taking Tom Ricketts, and that didn't work out so well.
Knocked it right out of the park.
Yep. I mean, and that was the day that the Pirates traded for a shortstop, and I can't remember Ray Quinones. They gave up on Jay Bell in 1989 and brought in Ray Quinones. And I was so mad about that trade. I was so excited about that trade. And then here Jay Bell became the great Pirates shortstop. And then, so I was all excited. I'm like, gosh, everyone's making trades. The Steelers got us another first-round pick. They just drafted the greatest running back of all time, Tim Worley. They got a guy from Pitt. They're going to be awesome. And then you throw in the fact that we've got Ray Quinones in here. Bah, it wasn't a good day. So there you go. With that, let's go on the inside. And Tony, I'm going to let you go first. No, okay. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go first, if you don't mind. So here's a guy, we just talked about a rookie in 1989 that was from the University of Pittsburgh, Tom Ricketts. Let me go with another 1989 rookie from the University of Pittsburgh. His name was Jerry Osafsky.
Woo! I was gonna.
And I know none of you were thinking that.
No.
Shannon, go ahead. Take Jerry O.
That's the first guy I thought of. You got 4 guys coming to mind. You had Jerry Osafsky. You had David Little.
That's my guy.
Both of them guys. You had Larry Foote. Because again, a guy was undersized and and even when he come back to Pittsburgh after going to Detroit, he went home and then he come back to Pittsburgh again. So, but all those guys, you just had to love them and the way they played, and they were true blue collar Steeler guys. But and now Jerry O still is helping the Steelers by being our inside linebacker coach, and I think he's doing a great job there. And it was heartbreaking what he went through last season. But,
God bless his family for that.
Oh yeah, but in true Osafsky fashion, he come back and rejoined the team, and so I think all those inside guys are better off for it. So, like I said, Osafsky was my first choice, and then I was like, oh man, somebody done picked it.
I'm going to speak for Tony here when I say Jerry O and a guy that you mentioned earlier, Greg Lloyd. They make me think of one of the greatest runs that the Steelers ever made with a bad team. And that 1989 season was just special. And it really was in the playoffs, and watching Jerry O. And here's a little trivia question for you. Jerry O did not wear 55 as a rookie. He wore another number. Who's the first one of you that could get it? I know Tony's got it. Go ahead. He's raising his hand.
94, right?
Nope.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, you can go ahead. Go again.
90?
Shannon doesn't seem to have it.
90?
92. So there you go. 92. Shannon White. That when you think of that 1989 season, you got to think of guys like Jerry O. And another guy. I'm going to throw in this guy who was a starting linebacker on that team and a guy that nobody talks about. But when in 93, when the San Diego Chargers came calling, they wanted to throw a lot of money at this guy, and the Steelers said, go ahead, because we've got Greg Lloyd and we have Kevin Green coming in, and Jarrell Williams.
Yeah.
He was a part of that 89 team, and he was a good blue collar. He was a tough player. He led them in sacks one year, I believe, as well. I don't think they were a lot of sacks, but he did lead them as well. So when we're talking about the outside linebackers and the inside linebackers, there's a lot of them that that's just the blue collar position. And when you think of blue collar right now, I think it starts and ends with blue collar and linebacker. We could have said on the inside, we could have said Vince Williams too, but he's not on the current team. But I think it's Robert Spillane.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to name mine too because that's who I wanted to name.
Oh
Vince
gosh,
Williams.
man. Oh,
I love Vince Williams. He's one of my favorite Steelers of all time.
I thought we were done, Tony. I'm sorry.
Well, no, yeah, but Vince Williams was just one of my favorites. I mean, a 6th-round pick in 2013, and he had to start 11 games that year for a defense that was ravaged by injuries, especially after week 1. And it was a baptism by fire. And by the end of the year, he was so lost that Troy had to come in and basically play a dime inside linebacker. But he got it together, and he became a dependable starter for a number of years and a leader on that defense. So Vinny Van Vucci or whatever. He's one of my favorites. Yeah. And then David Little. I mean, David Little, here's a guy who had to replace Jack Lambert, and he saved their bacon in '84 when Lambert had the turf toe. Yeah, and he was such a great player. And I don't know if you ever heard of Levon Kirkland's funny story from a number of years ago when he was a rookie. His second year, they cut David Little because they wanted Kirkland to be the starter, and Little was so popular with the defense that Rod Woodson would never go in the huddle and listen to his play. When Kirkland was trying to call the plays, he would ignore him. Greg Lloyd was always yelling at him. Kevin Green always ignored him because all he wanted to do was rush the passer. So it took him a while to gain their respect because they respected David Little so much and they cut him. Coward cut him.
Oh, but I didn't know that story.
Yeah, it was a funny story.
Myrna, Jane, and Bert saying James Farrer got to be a blue collar guy. He was a 1st-round pick, but I mean, he played blue collar. He came to Pittsburgh and he was perfect. Jason Gilden, really good one. Let me give you a number 2 pick from a blue collar town. And I've got to tell you, who I'm going to say. The ultimate blue collar guy from my hometown. One.
Oh, yeah.
Jack Raphael Ham.
Oh, yeah.
So Dover Shunka in the house. But yeah, that was my guy. And I was just talking to a coworker today, and he grew up and knew the Ham family, and he was a big Lambert guy. And he was probably about 10, 11 years old, and he was going over to their house, and her dad said, "Are you going to wear that Jack Lambert jersey you just got for Christmas?" He's like, "I don't care." And he's going over, and then he didn't know that Uncle Jack was going to be in town and open the door. And Uncle Jack made him turn the jersey inside out.
That's funny.
I just heard that story this morning, and I'm like, I love it. He's probably listening right now and probably going to yell at me, but I mean, that's just a great story. So yeah, that's, our outside linebacker, our inside linebackers have always been really, really good as far as, being rife with blue collarness, if that is even a word. Art Gordon's asking us a question here. It's not a super chat, but I'm going to go throw it up anyways. What year did you start watching Steeler games? And I would probably say Shannon, myself, and Tony, which were all within a year or two of each other. I was born in 71, Tony in 72, Shannon, 69 or 70?
70.
70. Okay, yeah. So we're all pretty close in age. So when I'm really cognizant of it was 1979, really. I remember the whole family watching it, and you go to grandparents' house on Sunday and everybody's in the living room watching the Steeler games, and you just grew up around it. And I remember Super Bowl 13 well too, but when I really started catching on was probably 79 for me, for both the Steelers and the Pirates. But I was asked not to talk about the Pirates in the live chat.
Let's go Bucks.
I don't blame you. But Tony, would you say like 79, 80, the same with you?
The first game I remember watching, very first game, I know I watched him before that, but I don't remember any of it. And that was the Super Bowl 14 in January of 80 against the Rams. The year before, against the Cowboys, my mom had it on in the kitchen, and I was watching some rerun of Tarzan, and I could have cared less. So 1980 was the first time I remember watching. And that was the first season that I lived and died for the Steelers. That following regular season.
Shannon, how about you?
I have a memory of Lynn Swann's MVP performance against the Cowboys, sitting right where I'm at now. This was my great-grandparents' living room before we got the house and built onto it and everything. And it was a black and white TV over in that corner. And I remember Lynn Swann making them catches because for the longest time, I had an 88 jersey when I was a little boy, and that was still receiver of all time. But when I felt like I understood more and can remember more, would have been the 78, the next Super Bowl against the Cowboys. And then I felt like I had more of an understanding, but I still have memories from that Lynn Swann MVP performance.
Yeah, I think that's I have memories like you. I've got memories from way before, and I love how Gene Smith says born in 79, so 79. And I get it, but if you're cognizant of 1979, then you're super baby, and
That's
whatever
right.
you're doing for a living, it's not good enough because you're super on the intelligence scale if you remember that 1979 team being born in 79. So I will actually say that, bringing that up, and you mentioned your first jersey was 88.
Yep.
Mine was 59. Mine was Jack Ham. And Tony, yours was, if I'm correct with this, yours was number 57, Mike Merriweather.
Yes, the worst timing ever.
That's awesome. Gene Smith says smuggling beers in an army coat for my dad in Lips rookie year 1984. That's awesome. So a 5-year-old smuggling beers.
Woo! That's a super fan right there.
That's a super fan. That's a super son. That's awesome.
That's right.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Art Gordon's first was 12. Craig J. Lawson, I've seen the first 4, but I watched the 78 and 79 Super Bowls because my older brothers, I was born in 1967. Yeah, so there's different times that you remember, and Art Gordon had a Bradshaw football. I had a signed Mike Webster football that my parents met Mike Webster at a spina bifida benefit. And this is, man, I played with that ball. I still have it, and it's faded, but oh gosh, I love it. Let's move on to the defensive backfield, gentlemen. And we'll start with corners, and we'll do some safeties. And remember, Troy Polamalu was a first-round draft pick, and I don't consider him blue-collar. I consider him more flash anyways. So if we start with corner, there's some really good blue-collar corners out there. Shannon, give me one.
Has to be Willie Gay.
Big play, Willie Gay.
Right.
I love it. I love it.
Watching
I love
him
that too.
come in, and I was like, he ain't gonna make it. He seemed slow. He wasn't very physical. I'm like, this guy ain't gonna make it. Then he goes to the Arizona, and then he comes back to the Steelers, and I'm like, oh Lord, no. Because every time he come in the game, I'm like, well, he's getting ready to give up a big play. But he learned, and he was crafty, and he was tenacious, and he turned into big play Willie Gay because he started making big plays for the Steelers. So I give him more with less physical talent than maybe any cornerback I ever seen.
Tony, Willie Gay is a good one, but I bet you could top it. Go ahead.
Well, there's a few, and somebody said Woodson, which might as well say Dion too. Although I love Woodson, he's one of my favorites. But I'm gonna go with Deshae Townsend. I think he's a great. Somebody mentioned it in the live chat. He came up 4th-round pick in 1998. He was a slot corner for a number of years. I think he could play. If I'm not mistaken, he could play safety too. But anyway, he was mostly a corner, and he was a team leader. And it's hard to do that from that position. And of course, he made that pivotal play against the Cowboys in 2008, and he was a coach on the field. He got just about every ounce he could out of his abilities, and Shannon described Willie Gay as crafty. You could say the same thing about Deshae Townsend. I mean, he's a coach now. He's he's the passing game coordinator, I think, for Mississippi. So maybe not Mississippi, but I forget where he's a coach. So yeah, I think he was just a great blue collar guy on a great defense.
I wanted to say J.T. Thomas, but he's a number 1 pick out of 1973, so we can't do that. Mel Blount is too easy, even though he wasn't a number 1 pick. But
Adonis.
yeah. I mean, I don't consider him blue collar. I consider him just a stud.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
So that's those are some pretty tough ones. Now safeties, I've got a whole bunch, but for me, it's a guy that stepped in when somebody on this list, the great Rod Woodson, got hurt, and it's the one and only Willie Williams. 7 interceptions that year.
Right.
You thought I was going to go with Carnell Lake.
Yeah, I did.
But he was the safety.
Yeah, but he did fill in. He
did.
He did fill in, and that was the ultimate blue collar move. That really was.
Yep.
But that year, where are you without Willie Williams in 1995?
Right. Right.
So there you go. You know what? I'm giving me that for Art Gordon's giving me that for Willie Williams. The pat on the back. So that's the left field one of the day. Now
I like it.
Let's go to safety. My gosh, I know we know the ultimate. We know the ultimate, so we can say it in unison on 3. 1, 2, 3. Donnie Shell. I mean,
Donnie Shell. That's right.
Oh man, this and that from Pennsylvania just screwed me out of my special one. Rick Woods. Oh, I like that. I mean, that's one that I had number 22 on my list. But go ahead, throw them out there, boys. Tony, go ahead.
Well, I mean, he made me angry today on Twitter because he said that Chris Brown was more talented than Michael Jackson, but I'll forgive him. But I'm going to go with Ryan Clark, undrafted free agent. They brought him over from Washington. Here's a guy who had to play alongside Troy Polamalu, all flash, and Ryan Clark was he had to be the blue collar guy in that secondary, and he had to basically play more of a steady role to allow Troy to improvise. And they asked him one time about because Troy would always get a lot of time off at training camp, and they asked if Ryan Clark got that too. He said, "You're asking the wrong safety. I never got that kind of treatment." So he was a very underrated player. And I know a lot of people. He ruffled some feathers with his sound bites, but he's obviously gone on to have a great broadcasting career. But he was such a valuable member of that second Super Bowl team. And then even look at the plays he made when they went to the third Super Bowl, that divisional round comeback against the Ravens. He made 2 or 3 pivotal plays to help come back in the second half. So I'll always appreciate what Ryan Clark did when he was here.
Damn it, Tony, you talked way too long. Now George Teston stole mine.
Sorry. I'm very long-winded.
Shin, I'm going to jump in front of you. Glenn Edwards, number 27, Glenn Edwards. He's another guy like Lauren Tays. You could talk about 40 guys from the 70s. You might not be bringing up Glenn Edwards. And I get it if you're not. But, man, Glenn Edwards was huge for that team. And, damn it, Gene Smith took my other one. You know what? I quit. Gene, go ahead.
I forgot all about him. How can I forget about him?
Well, first thing I thought of was, and then I thought of Ryan Clark, which Tony already got. A guy that I think a lot of people forget also with Glenn Edwards was Mike Wagner. And Mike was the guy who was just so fundamentally sound and reliable. And, on those great defenses, where would they have been without Wagner? I would have to say Mike Wagner.
Beautiful. And I'm going to talk about Darren Perry right now. Number 8 pick out of Penn State. And he was not thought of in 1992 of being anything special, and he's playing right away. And he's playing on a team that was supposed to go 4-12 in Bill Cowher's first year. And Darren Perry was great for this team. And I just absolutely I will actually say it, one of the top 5 safeties in Pittsburgh Steelers history is Darren Perry. But
he was so consistent.
What stood out about Perry to you?
Because to me, he seemed more like a linebacker, but he was everywhere. He had the speed. He was tough, and he was just Mr. Reliable. When you needed something, it seemed like it was Darren Perry, and it just didn't seem like he was exerting any effort whatsoever. It just seemed natural.
To me, just instincts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just when you'd watch the replay, he was already moving before the ball was in there. So many times, it's like he had a natural feel for the position, and that's what always stood out about Perry to me.
Let me throw in one more, and there's a few more. Art Gordon says Tony Dungy. Gene Smith says don't forget Mike Logan. Yeah, Mike Logan was great for that team. I wish he was there longer. I would have loved to have seen them draft him in 1996 instead of Jermaine Stevens. I think that would have been great to have him longer. But the funny thing about that, if they draft him number 1 overall, not number 1 overall, but number 1 in 1996, he might not be considered he might be considered like Terrell Edmonds. Not as a great number 1, but I mean they had the 29th pick back then. So one guy that I got to bring up, and I got to bring up another corner, and I'm going to do that in a second. But Thomas Everett was a guy that I said this back then. I'm surprised that this guy's not paralyzed. Because I mean, he did lead with his head. I mean, I don't think Thomas Everett could play today.
But not like that.
He would launch himself, and he would just rattle your teeth.
Right.
And he is a Pro Bowler, but he was never a Pro Bowler with the Steelers. But he ended up getting that Pro Bowl with either Dallas or Tampa, and I think it was Dallas. And man, he was just absolutely tough. But man, you guys are going to kick yourselves when I bring up I believe it was an 11th round draft choice, 1979, but led them as a rookie in interceptions. How could we forget Dwayne Woodruff?
Oh, I didn't forget him. I didn't think he was. He didn't seem like a blue collar guy because he was such a steady starter for them. But I forgot. That's a good one. I like that.
And Gene Smith's asking if we brought up Chris Hope. No, I missed him, but I saw you put him up there earlier. Chris Hope was a guy that I would have loved to have seen him stay on after that 2005 championship season as well. Hope he was good. I mean, a lot of great players. I could talk old Steelers all the time. And one thing, Tony and I used to do the retro show, and that was just gold for all of this. But
that was awesome.
And every time it seemed like Woodruff was always doing something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every time Woodruff did something, it's like when I went to a Pirate game back in the 80s, you know who always had a great game? Jeff King.
Oh, yeah.
When I was in the house, Jeff King would go crazy. So,
to circle back to Donnie Scheller, it's a wonder it took him so long to get in the Hall of Fame because every time we did a retro show, it seemed like he was making one play after another.
He was saving bacon every single game. It seems. Gentlemen, this was a kind of like a retro show, but we talked about today. We didn't talk about a current defensive back. So let's go ahead and end this with Shannon, your current blue-collar defensive back for the Steelers. And Tony, you can do the same.
I have to say Levi Wallace, because of his pedigree, that he was a walk-on at Alabama. And then, I know this will be his first year with the Steelers, but I love his toughness, his intelligence, and his tenacity. So I'm a big Levi Wallace fan. I think he's an upgrade over what Hayden was last year, and I'm really excited to see him in the black and gold.
Tony, you got one?
Yeah, I think Cam Sutton, he fits that bill for me because, third round pick, but he seems like he's a coach's dream. They ask him to do a lot. He can play outside, he can play in the slot, play some safety, and they seem to think an awful lot of him. He's probably somebody who's never going to be a superstar, but he could develop into a really solid player. So I'm going to go with Cam.
I'm going against the rules if I say Terrell Edmonds because he's a first rounder, but Edmonds does personify that. So let me give you a guy that's more known as a special teamer, but I think he's tough as hell, and it's Miles Killebrew. I really like what he brings to the game. So I tell you what, I love talking about the past. I love talking about the current, and this and that from Pennsylvania. No, you do not get Harvey Clayton on this list. God bless him. I wish him the best, but number 33 was probably the worst corner in history for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we're getting the LOL. I love it. I mean, I wish him great. I mean, I'd love to talk to Harvey, but man, he was the first Steeler that I remember my family cussing. And like my grandfather was born in 1900, so this is the mid 80s. It's like 1986. He's 86. He's like, Harvey Clayton. Like, wow, he does not like Harvey Clayton. So with that being said, it was a great time, gentlemen. We will see you next week. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you for hanging out. We cannot do these shows without you. God bless you. Stick with BTSC for all of your Pittsburgh Steeler needs. It's the editorial side where you're going to get the work of these two guys. Yes, Gene Smith, go Maulers. I love them. They stink, but I love them. And check out all of our shows coming up later on. After this show airs, the next show that's going to air is going to be from the cutting room floor. You need to check that out. That's Jeffrey Benedict. And if you missed Let's Ride this morning, you missed a lot, and you missed a great guest, as he had Alan Saunders on today as well. So Jeff Hartman show, fantastic stuff. Do not miss any of these shows. Go back and check out some old ones too, especially. And if you really want to have some fun, go back in time to 2017 and check out old post-game shows with Tony and myself. The audio is horrible, and we weren't that much better, but we had some fun.
Oh yeah, late night games,
gentlemen. Just when you think that you've got all of the answers, Tony Defeo,
we keep changing the questions.
Shannon White, you take this home. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the hypocycloids. We love you. Somebody, I don't know if Shannon's frozen or if he's just doing the pose. We'll see you later. We love you all. Blessings.